Right then guys, welcome to the video, welcome back to the channel. We're back at Motion Motorsport and a lot has happened. It looks very different, but yet the same in some weird ways. But I'm basically just gonna show you everything that's changed. There's been so much stuff that's happened underneath the car, and there's some bits that have come back from powder coating. There's just various things to show you today to give you an update. There's also a box of all the stuff that's come off this car, which I will also show you as well, which is quite funny. And so, by the way, I basically only just got here, so this is, you're kind of finding all this out at the same time as I am. As you can see, various things have happened underneath. There has been some bits cut out. That is what's happening today, and there is bits that have been left for me to show you before they get cut out as well. As you can see, bits are getting cut out there. This has all been cut back to the entire area where there is clean metal, so there is absolutely no rust here. And also, this whole area has been repaired as well. This is a brand new piece. I'm gonna get the guys to talk about this in way more detail because obviously they can explain exactly what work has been done. But before all of that, I will show you the box of rust bits of stuff that's come out of this car, because it's pretty crazy how much stuff has actually come out. Apparently the box weighs 5 kilos, so let me show you this. In here is pretty much everything that's come off in terms of been ground off the bottom of the car or has been cut out, as you can see. This is that rusty piece behind the wheel arch liner. Definitely seen better days. Look at that. There you can see some of the repairs I tried to do behind the rear speakers up close as well. And yeah, this whole box is just full of all this stuff that has just come off of this car. So guys, got Dave here, and what's happened over the last sort of week or so?
Okay, so obviously you saw when we disassembled the car to get it to a point where we can start to use the grinder and come back to bare metal and see the true condition of the car. We've spent a few days underneath it with the grinder, taken everything back to bare metal where necessary. Some bits are in really good condition from the factory. There's no point in going back to bare metal in there, i.e. these places.
Right, okay.
So you just get all the stuff around. You can go bare metal across the entire car, but what you're doing is robbing it of some protection that's already there. So the entire car's been back to bare metal as much as is necessary. If you have a look at it, is where you'll see it's like 90% of it. And then car gets hit with a rust converter then, which is sort of like, it stops the rust exactly where it is, kills it, then gives you a sort of like a base to prime from. And then obviously at that stage, you can see all of the bits that need to be repaired. It's at a point now where we're going to start doing all the metal repairs, cutting out metal, and obviously there's a few other extra bits that we found along the way. And obviously we touched upon the front rad support last time we were here, where you thought it had like a small crash in the past, which looked like sort of pretty innocuous, but the further you get into it, you see that there's a little bit more to it. Talk you through that in a second, but essentially we're at a stage now where we can start to cut it out and start doing the metal work.
So I guess let's have a more detailed walk around underneath this thing and see the progress that's actually been made. Dave, you were saying it's all bare metal, but looking a little purpley now, and that is the rust converter.
That's the rust converter, yeah. So everywhere that you can see which looks murky or sort of purple has been back to bare metal. All of the corrosion has been treated and ground back. And then once that's done, the entire car gets dried off. We brake cleaning the entire shell so that we can start to rust convert it. We put the rust converter on there just so that once you've ground it back, you don't spend the next couple of days coming in and going, oh, get the grinder back out and going back over rust. Because as with anything, when you leave it outside in this sort of weather and there's moisture in the air, it does start to rust again. So you've got to treat that immediately, which is what we do. And obviously in doing that, when you go back to bare metal, we can see now all of the areas that need addressing. Some of them we knew about in the first place from the health check. Some of them are quite new, or things that we've spotted along the way when you start to take seam sealer and stuff off. So we'll have a look through that now. So the first thing would be, obviously we knew that the car needed a pair of arch panels. For reference, we've kept one side in and cut one side out so you can see it. Obviously this now is the original arch, which obviously needs repair and was covered in Olly's lovely underseal.
Yeah,
it's made the job much nicer than it needed to be. And then obviously you've got sections of the sill here which have got holes in and need cutting out as well. Obviously we don't ground that back because it was obviously something that needs repairing. I'll get cut out. If you come to this side, if you pan around, you see all of the areas in the shell which get treated. There's a couple of bits here that are going to need doing as well. See how the hole's not really a nice uniform curve anymore. This is where this rots through. That's where the handbrake bungs go. So this will get cut out and a new piece put in there. And following around here, so the area on the other side where you can see the small hole in the inner sill has been cut out. The entire arch panel's been cut out, and then the corrosion around the lip and a little bit on the outer sill as well. And then what we then do is, obviously we've got the arch panel kits that we sell ourselves, and we cut that out and prep the panel to go in. But it also gives you access to, this is the behind the speaker area. So when you take the speakers out inside, if any of you are going to go and look at an EP3 to buy, absolutely get the speakers taken out so you can see what the condition of this is. Because obviously if you've got a car where someone's undersealed it, or tried to preserve this area, you can only preserve what's in front of you, which is the base of the car, the underside of the car. The actual corrosion develops from the inside. So if you can take the speakers out, you can see this area. Obviously when that's got a panel in, you can't. That gives you a good idea of what this outer sill and inner sill and behind this arch panel is going to look like. So obviously now that's been cut out, the same thing will happen that side. This gets prepped the same way as the rest of the car. All of the corrosion is taken away, the rust converters put in there, then you have the rust encapsulator inside that, and then the panel gets fitted. That's what a prepped panel looks like, and that then fits inside there. Then we can spot weld up there and team weld around all the edges, and then build all these areas up at the same time. Then if you're moving along to the front of the car, obviously your car has got really good sills, and the only real areas are small teeny bits there, one at the rear and one there. So there's not really any real merit in replacing this. It's all literally as it was in the factory, really. The corrosion on the top is so minimal, there's nothing there at all. So we've cut big sections out to allow us to repair enough of the metal so there's no corrosion left in there at all, both front and rear. And obviously in doing this bit, there's no real outer sill damage to speak of in this section. But in this one, next to the jacking point, if you come round here, you can also see that the outer sill had a load of corrosion here. So if you don't treat this when we do the inside, all you're going to end up doing is let that seep through back from the inside and then ruin the sill again. So we have to treat that whilst we're there at the same time. Front arches, again, nothing really to speak of here. It's quite a good shell, as we knew. So that's all been ground back, treated, and that's ready for all of this will be ready for the encapsulation stage after we've done the repairs. Then obviously we had these issues on this front panel where it had a bit of a shunt here in the past, which had moved the leg across. So we drilled the spot welds out and cut the original rad support bracket off, straightened the chassis leg with the porta power using measurements from the other side to make sure that the subframe bolts all go in the correct place, because that's where the subframe bolt locates. When we were speaking just about this looking like it was just a fairly superficial crash or impact, what it's actually done is hit this section, which is obviously bolted onto the subframe here, which has moved all of that force through the subframe backwards. And where the rear subframe bolt goes, you can see how elongated this hole is now, and there's actually a crease in the body there where that bolt and subframe has been pushed back. So you can see that that's not quite level. It sort of sits like this. So we're going to have to try and have a look at what to do with this, whether or not we're going to warm it up and bring that back into a position that we can get it to where everything measures up properly, or it may be that we need to cut a little bit of a relief in the chassis itself to be able to get that right. But to give you some reference, this is how it should look this side. Perfectly round hole. The bolt sits nice and flush and totally level, as obviously on the other side it's like that. So we're going to have a look at that as well. This side, sill in really good condition. It's all ground back and then treated. The only bit really is that little hole at the rear by the arch panel area.
Also, you did notice it's been jacked up here as well, which I didn't know about it.
So obviously the side skirt hides all of this. So what's happened in the past is someone probably with like a Halford's trolley jack or something like that, where it's got the really tiny little metal cups, which are no good for sills anyway, has been jacked up in the wrong position and then probably slipped off the jack and caused that crease there. So all of this will get ground back, and then we'll probably have to put a little blob of weld on a bolt on a slide hammer and just pull that straight. And the same here on the rear one as well. And this one's a little bit worse, so we might find we're going to have to cut this out and put a piece in. Once all this is cut out and we get to see what the state of that is from the inside, whether or not we can straighten that from the inside or pull it with a slide hammer, or whether or not we need to put a section in there, we'll decide when we get a little bit further into it. But that gives you a solid idea now of where the car's at, what's required to get it to a proper standard of repair and protection. It's just a time consuming process, but one that you can only really do if you do it to this extent. Hence the 2-3 week block in the diary and the slight dent in your wallet, mate. But it's well worth it. And a side note as well, whilst obviously you've been away in the week, all the bits have gone off to zinc and powder coat. So all the chassis and suspension components, bracketry and stuff has all come back. We're still waiting for a couple of bits to come back for like the hubs and the uprights, but heat shields, brake line brackets, anti-roll bar brackets, rad supports, the aircon drain bracket, all the ABS brackets. So when we do a powder coated set, it's not just hubs and uprights and trailing arms. We take all the brackets off of all the ABS wires and these get powder coated, so when it all goes back together and there's nothing that when you look in the wheel arch you go, ugh, can't believe you put that back on. So it should look like brand new when it's done.
Just a PSA, which I didn't know about this. I brought these along today because I went to Tego to pick them up. These are a replacement, so if you're running, I don't even know what the end year is, where they changed the design.
A couple of years ago really is when it started to come in, but essentially they just crack along this section here. So obviously if left for too long, that's quite dangerous because the bolt and the damper or the car is supported via that bolt.
Yeah.
So once that cracks, you end up with the...
And it turned out actually both of mine had cracked underneath as well. So it was a free replacement, but yeah, worth checking if you've got an older version of the Yellow Speed coilovers, just to check whether yours are split as well. It's mad even just seeing all the stuff laid out like this. In my head, it's always been like, oh, it happens to other people's cars. So to see that all this stuff's going to go on my car and it's going to look this fresh, it's just wild. Again, this is obviously something, if you're long-term thinking of keeping the car, that it is worth investing in for the future, because in the next 5 to 10 years, I don't really know how many of these are going to be left unless they've had some major work done like this. It's definitely worthwhile thinking about, or just planning for in the next few years or whatever, just saving up, because that's exactly what I've been doing pretty much ever since I drove Adrian's car, the Garage EP3 I own now. That was pretty much when I was like, I need to do this to mine, because this is clearly going to be the death of it if I don't. Next steps for this then are the panels going to go in?
Yes, so obviously like we were saying, where we left one side out so that we could show you the sort of like the comparison between the two, or what it was before and what it looks like now. And the next stage is obviously, now that most of the corrosion is cut out, then it's a case of encapsulating this speaker rail behind the speaker area before we put the panel in, because obviously once the panel's in you can't protect that area, so it makes much more sense to do it at this stage. So we'll encapsulate all this area now that there's no corrosion or rust or anything in there, and all the rust has been treated and stopped. The encapsulator then provides you with like a primer and prevents any corrosion from growing in there. So once that's done, then the panel can be fitted, and once the panel's fitted, what you end up doing is tacking it in a few places, then weld all the way around the outside. Then this area will get repaired. Once that's repaired, it gets seam sealed, so you seam seal over all of the weld areas, so no moisture or anything can get in or out, and then that area is then fully done and ready to go, and then just work away along the rest of the car. And once all of the metal work is done, the seam sealer is the next stage. Once the seam sealer has been done, that's to dry. Otherwise, as soon as you try and sort of brush any encapsulator or anything like that on it, sort of tries to peel the seam sealer off. So yeah, especially in this weather, it's really cold, you just got to give everything the best chance that you can to cure, which makes it last longer in the future and gives you a better finish whilst you're doing it. There's no point rushing anything at this stage. So once the seam sealer is dry, the encapsulator goes on the car, then that gets keyed off with Scotch-Brite, which is again another time-consuming process. Another layer of encapsulator, another Scotch-Brite,
wow.
And then the underseal goes on after that. So there's probably at least 4 days really in between the first coat of seam sealer and the final coat of encapsulator, and it being ready to a point where you can underseal it. So wow. It's just one of those. I mean, if we lived in the Bahamas and everything dried within about 20 minutes, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. But specifically at this time of year when it's pretty cold, there's loads of moisture in the air, you just got to try and take your time and make sure that everything's keyed off and dried before anything else gets put over the top of it. Otherwise, we're in the same boat as the guys that are just spraying the underside of the car with underseal. You're just trapping things in. So yeah, it's a little bit of a time-consuming process, but one that you can only do in specific stages.
Yeah, and it's also the only real way to do it to guarantee that there'll be no rust underneath.
Exactly, yeah. Obviously, as with anything, there's no absolute guarantee that everything will last forever. All you can do is make sure you do the best job that you possibly can to give you 99.99% confirmation that nothing's going to grow in the future. And yeah, you can only do that by taking your time with it and drying it and trusting the process, really. It's very easy to be like, right, come on, let's do the next bit. And then if you rush it, you end up making a bit of a mess of it, and you end up going back and redoing it anyway. So a week from now, we should be at a point where it's either ready to be undersealed or it's just been undersealed. And obviously, for us, we need to try and get it done as fast as we can. But obviously, in the interest of making sure that we get everything on video in the correct stage and in the right environment, and so you guys can see every part of this process, we will be a little bit patient in undersealing it.
Well, let's let the guys crack on cutting bits out, welding in new bits. Let's see what happens in the rest of the day. So this piece is getting cut out. As you can see, it's pretty close to being out. To be able to see behind here with the best view it's probably ever seen since it was probably put together, I guess. Here is that piece cut out, and now we can see into the rear arch area, and as you can see it's pretty bad. That is some welding wire from when I got that little piece welded up, and that was just a preventative measure because I knew something like this was going to happen at some point where all of this is going to get cut out. So if you can also see further back just there, that's just super thick rust. So what is going to happen is this whole piece is pretty much going to get replaced. All of this along here is going to get cut out because it's not in the best of shape, but obviously it's impossible to do anything about this unless you cut this piece out to be able to get in this easily. It's crazy to see it like this at this angle rather than looking through the rear speaker, which is obviously just up there. And fast forward a little bit of time, and as you can see, this panel is now all ground back the best as possible. What is actually going to happen, which I pretty much knew was going to happen from when I got this repair done, is you can see this bit here comes along here and then drops down here. That piece is all going to get cut out. This bit of damage won't be seen because the time that it takes to hammer this down and get this nice, you might as well just cut this bit out and replace it. It's going to be quicker. Also, you can see this little cut line here, so this bit's going to get all cut out because this is rotten. But something I have just learned, which is pretty cool, so you can see further down here, you see this little lip here, so these are all the way along the sill, and this was one here actually, but this one's rotted away. These are all little like drain holes for water coming out from inside the arch or whatever. That's why these are never just like puddles of water inside. So this piece is now pretty much ready to go in terms of either getting stuff cut out or also pieces getting cut to fit in the gap. So let me show you the other side, and this is what is obviously going to happen to the other side. So this has an acid wash to stop any rust happening, and then this is the rust inhibitor stuff. So you can see it's like, looks like black paint, but this stuff is going to stop it rusting. And the reason for doing this bit now is obviously when the panel is in there, how do you get in here apart from going through the rear speakers again? This is drying now. Next step would then be to weld in the piece that goes in here. Here is another piece that's going to get cut out, so you can see the pink line that's going to get cut out that much as a replacement piece. Then there's also this area here that's going to get another little box piece into that bit, and there's also this piece here, and like mentioned as well, this is going to get pulled down. This bit will get cut out somewhere around here to get this fixed as well. And as you can see, that piece just got sliced out and exposing even more areas like here that needs a bit of work as well. But yeah, just mad seeing the car just getting cut up like that, and now it's got a massive hole in it. So those bits just got pinged off because you can't obviously see this rust behind here unless you take that piece off. That's why, well, both those spot welds got drilled out. You can see why you need to take that piece off, because if you just leave that in there, obviously that's only going to get worse over time. Also, alongside all of this stuff already being done, here are my front and rear anti-roll bars and the progress plate. This has come back from sandblasting and is ready to go to powder coating. These are not going black, I will say that. So they're not going to be like all of these brackets, they'll be going a different color, but I'm going to leave that as a little surprise for one of the future videos. Whilst the car's in this many bits, might as well get some sort of service or whatever as well. I've had this Mugen oil filter sat on my desk for almost a year now since I visited BHP Imports. They were very kind and gifted me this when on my visit. So I'll be throwing this Mugen oil filter in because the car is due a service as well. This is obviously quite a major service. Also, while I'm here, you can see this little bumper bracket. I remembered that one was broken on the other side. So I've actually picked up a load. Well, I've got a whole bag of these. I don't actually need a whole bag, but a whole bag was cheaper than one genuine Honda one. I'll leave a link to them in the description if you want to pick them up. And that is just going to go in here. There we go. That's in there. Super easy. So this is the rust converter stuff getting brushed onto the car. Obviously, this is much easier now. There's a massive hole cut out underneath so that you can just brush it in without reaching your hand in. It's is where the car is going to be left for today. Welding obviously still needs to happen. I'm going to come back before the undersealing and we can catch that all going on as well. So that will be part 3. Don't forget guys, this is part 2 of what I think is going to be 5 parts. Go check out part 1 if you're confused on what's going on. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with these videos as they come out. Also comment down below what you think of the massive holes that are in the EP3 now. Pretty crazy. And also drop a like down below because that helps the channel out a lot. Either way, that's going to do it for this one guys. So don't forget to subscribe and I'll catch you guys in the next one.